Welcome to the Warrior 1 to 100 Leveling Skills Guide. I'll be going over all of your skills as you're trying to just become explosions. Literally just all the explosions. Better than the rest of them, but also hopefully kill your enemies along the way. Watch as I go from this to this. This is a beginner-focused series aimed to help those new to Final Fantasy XIV, the MMO genre, or still just need a little help. In that same vein, this will be focused on your actions and how to use them. We'll not be going deep into optimization, instead focused on the general play and giving general opening rotations. We will go through these together in order to help new players understand the process. If you wish to push your play further, there are further places you could research the job. The goal here is to drop players in on the ground level so they can make strides to improve themselves. Tooltips are broken up by expansion, and that expansion's level cap. So level 50 for A Realm Reborn, 60 for Heavensward, 70 for Stormblood, 80 for Shadowbringers, 90 for Endwalker, and our final level cap of 100 in Dawntrail. I recommend all players add Sprint and Limit Break to the hotbars, both found in the General tab of the Actions menu. And as for how my hotbars build, it'll make sense at 100. Just put your skills on your hotbar so that you are comfortable as you play. Everyone has their own way of doing things. If you want more info on the how and why I set up my UI, check the description for a video about it. Finally, keep in mind that this is an active MMO. Patches can and will change jobs. Check the description for a quick overview of each patch's changes or special notes. With all that out of the way, please support me in whatever way you can, check my links below, and let's begin. Most people consider Warrior the easiest of the tanks. Simple rotation, literally powered by anger, and some extremely strong abilities. Focused mostly on windows of big critical hits, and hitting very few buttons to achieve this burst of damage. Putting out damage is very much the most simple of any tank. The abilities Warrior brings are strong and have a bit of flexibility. Party shields and some extremely strong self-healing. You don't have much in helping out the party, but what you do have is very strong. Simple and straightforward like the rest of the job. Local man too angry to die. To play a Marauder, you either start as one, or pick the class up in the Limsolo Minsa Marauders Guild after completion of your level 10 class quest as your first class. Let's get into the finer details of each skill. Level 1, Tank Mastery. This is a passive trait all tanks have. You have an automatic 20% reduction to all damage received. This really puts the tank in tank. The maximum HP bit means you will have the most HP of any role, with Vitality being worth a bit extra. The Strength bit? I don't get why that is there, as a tank is still doing less damage than any DPS. Level 1, Heavy Swing. This is our first basic global cooldown. It does a simple 150 potency hit to a single target. Keep hitting enemies until they die. Level 4, Maim. This is our first combo skill. It does 100 potency of damage, or 250 when used in a combo. Going forward, I will only mention combo potencies, because you should never use combos out of order. Combos also light up when executable, like this. By nature of being a combo, this is always going to come after Heavy Swing. We're going to alternate these back and forth constantly until we get more skills. Level 6, Berserk. On a 60-second cooldown, Berserk gives you 3 stacks of itself. This causes the next 3 weapon skills you do to be critical direct hits, or as strong as an attack can be with both statuses stacking. Our goal with this is to buff the 3 best attacks we can, which we don't really have a toolkit right now. Use this after a Heavy Swing, and then you will buff 2 Maims and a Heavy Swing. Later on, we're gonna change up how this is used several times. Just don't for some reason use Berserk when you aren't attacking. There's a 15-second time limit to use the 3 stacks you are given, so you can't use it way ahead of time. We get the first of our role actions here at level 8 with Rampart. This is our first mitigation. These skills are extremely important as a tank, even your most important buttons. Put these on your bars and get to know them well, but I will not be going over them here. There will be a link in the corner and in the description for a dedicated video on these skills. Do check it out. Level 10, Overpower. This is our first AoE, Area of Effect, attack. It used to be far cooler. It's a 5-yalm AoE in a circle around you. You have to aim yourself to the middle of the enemies to hit them all. If you pull a bunch of enemies, you may need to get really close just to hit them all. It does 110 potency to every enemy hit. When you run up to a group of enemies, hit Overpower to deal damage and get enmity established. We're gonna talk more about this in the next skill, but enmity is your ultimate goal. The damage is strong, but this is a key tool for making sure trash packs stay on you rather than your allies. At this point, even on 2 enemies, this is stronger than single target attacks. But I recommend using AoE on 3 or more enemies beyond the initial pull-in. That's how many enemies it takes for most jobs to have a stronger AoE toolkit than single target. Finally, use Berserk for AoE. Every enemy hit will take the critical direct hit damage, not just the first enemy hit. 5 enemies around you, all 5 enemies will take full Berserk damage. Level 10, Defiance. On a very short cooldown, this turns on and off your enmity stance. Defiance massively increases your ability to generate enmity, how much enemies want to kill you, and thus not attack your allies. It comes with a UI element, this small gem. If it is glowing, it is on, and you always want to have this on in dungeons. Once you get into duties with multiple tanks, it becomes a maybe. Your party list comes with an enmity gauge. When targeting an enemy, that enemy's enmity will be measured under every ally's icon. You want to be in the lead with an A. If you look at the enemy list, they have colored indicators too. You want the red square. If it looks like anything else, you do not have the enmity lead. As mentioned, exceptions come into play when there are multiple tanks. There's 2 or 3 of you depending on the content. Fighting for the enmity lead with other tanks is an extremely bad idea that can get allies killed. Only one of you will be in charge of the boss, the other is in charge of picking up adds, additional enemies, or the boss when the other tank dies or is otherwise not able to tank. General idea is whoever puts on their enmity stance first when entering a duty is in charge of the boss as the main tank. Every tank has their own version of Defiance, same effect, but name and icon differ. You'll get used to the icons and animations as you progress, but it's a rule you can follow. Or you could go based on who has more gear and HP. Best choice, though, is to use your words and communicate. Controller users on consoles, buy a cheap $5 USB keyboard. Worth it. Beyond who is currently tanking, you want to be ready to immediately assume tanking duties if the other tank dies. Shortly into a fight, turn on Defiance, even when you are the designated off tank. This guarantees that you are in second place in enmity above your DPS and healer allies. The moment the other tank dies, the boss will hit you instead of your team. Make sure you quickly move into position 2, since you want the boss to face away from the party. The other worry is with level sync. Level sync will remove tank stance even if you had it on. You must always make sure Defiance is on when you enter a duty. Once you gain control, turn it on. This is especially needed in dungeons as the only tank around. Ultimately though, simply turn it on, then hit enemies hard to make them eat your face. Our next role actions are Low Blow at level 12 and Provoke at level 15. Level 15, Tomahawk. This skill is not automatically obtained. You must do your class quests for it. Please, especially being a tank, do your class and job quests. These skills are all extremely important. I won't be mentioning this further, but there is an indication in the top left corner when a skill is a quest-locked skill. Please do them. For Tomahawk, this is an engagement and positioning tool. Within 20 yalms away, you can throw your axe at enemies for a 150 potency hit and a further enmity multiplier, ensuring whatever you hit near guaranteed is targeting you only. You can use this if you lose enmity on a target, for positioning new targets, or for getting a far away target that is still relevant. Tomahawk is great for starting battles. It drags the enemies towards you as you run toward them. This lets you get into the actual fight and grab aggro sooner. For bosses, this lets you move a boss sitting on the edge of an arena to the middle of it, a place bosses usually want to be. Outside of this though, you don't want to use Tomahawk much. It's single target and weaker than doing normal combos. The tank should not be running out of range of the enemies they are fighting, unless mechanics force you to, such as a large AoE around the boss. When it does force you out of range, you're not out of range for long, running immediately back in. Later we get an option for quickly making it back into range without needing to Tomahawk, but if you are out of range of a boss for a long time, use Tomahawk to keep your damage going. Good news is, anytime you do need to use Tomahawk, it does not break combos. Role actions once again come in here with Interject at level 18 and Reprisal at level 22. Level 26, Storm's Path. This is the third hit of our combo. This does a whopping 380 potency to a target. This is way higher than our other hits. It's a good damage boost, but additionally it also heals you. When finishing your combo, you heal yourself for a 250 potency heal. This only happens every 3 attacks, and you won't be using it in trash mobs, but on single target, this is a decent bit of healing for sustaining you. Level 30, Thrill of Battle. On a 90-second cooldown, Thrill will increase your maximum HP by 20%. This will automatically heal you for the amount of that increase, so you don't need to be healed afterwards to make use of that increased HP. It lasts for 10 seconds before dropping your max HP back to normal. This is a cooldown for when you're about to take a lot of damage, tank busters that hit you hard, or lots of trash mobs. You'll need to capitalize on it after the hit, but reduces just how much healing you need. Missing 20% of your HP after a heal essentially means missing nothing once the cooldown wears off. In a pinch, you can use the skill specifically for the healing. If you're super low on health and your healer seems to be struggling, you can use Thrill just for the 20% HP of healing. Survival is ultimately the key, even if you're only using half of the effect. Outside of bosses, this tends to be the only real way to use it anyway, since trash is more about consistent damage rather than big hits. To obtain the warrior job, you must first reach level 30 and complete the level 30 Marauder quest. Additionally, complete the main scenario quest, Self-Management, which is at level 20 in the story. Return to the guild, and the quest should be there for you. Level 32 is the role action of Arm's Length. This is a defensive cooldown, by the way. Please check that video if you don't believe me. Level 35, the Beast Within, and Inner Beast. Our little gem has now expanded into a full bar. When using Defiance, rather than glowing, we get some sick horns. Rock on, dude. This gauge is generated anytime we use Maim and Storm's Path. Maim is 10 gauge every use, and Storm's Path is 20 every use. So one full combo is 30 gauge every time. At 50 gauge, this allows for the use of our new skill, Inner Beast. This does 330 potency of damage to a single target for spending the gauge. Simply put, dump your gauge on bosses when you get enough. It's not quite as big a hit as Storm's Path, but has no combo requirements and does not break your combo. Hit enemies, hit harder with Inner Beast. Combine it with Berserk when it comes off of cooldown. If you have gauge, hit Berserk, then spend your Beast gauge to make Inner Beast hit way harder. This is something we can take into account with openers later on. Level 38, Vengeance. On a long 2-minute cooldown, Vengeance reduces all damage by 30% for 15 seconds. This is a very big defensive buff, greatly negating most large hits into something much more manageable. On top of this though, Warrior continues to be unique, with this also being an attack. Any physical hit you take causes the enemy to take spike damage, taking 55 potency of damage. On bosses, this is nice, but not that significant. In trash pools where there's 5, 6, 10 enemies, it's a lot of damage. That assumes they're physical attacking enemies though. You can tell what the damage type is by looking at the rolling damage numbers. The sword means physical damage. But since trash mobs are going to be doing a lot of damage in large groups, you're able to survive way better with the mitigation. Trash is more dangerous than bosses, and this skill is the perfect counter. Use it in bosses too though. Level 40, Mythril Tempest. Our AoE now has a combo. Overpower combos into Mythril Tempest, which is the same size and shape for an AoE. The effects are much stronger, doing a 140 potency hit to all enemies within range. Then it grants a buff, Surging Tempest. This increases all damage you deal by 10% for 30 seconds. This buff can be stacked to a maximum of 60 seconds. Your AoE is stronger in 2 ways. Your combo boosts the average hit you do, then all attacks you do after even a single AoE combo are 10% stronger. When you're down to 1 or 2 enemies, you can swap to your single target attack to finish them off, with those still being buffed. This is not something you need to use in boss fights unless there are adds that warrant AoE. The buff is not that good if it means you're using AoE on a single enemy. We'll have a single target way of getting the buff soon enough. Level 42, Holmgang. This is an interesting one. This is Warrior's invulnerability skill. It has a lengthy 4-minute cooldown, which is short for invulns. For 10 seconds, you cannot die, with some exceptions. Usually this is high-end rating stuff going through it. Otherwise your HP will hit 1 and never drop to 0. This is a god tier skill. In high-end raiding, the short cooldown allows you to essentially skip a lot of tank busters. The 10-second timer means there's a lot of leeway for healing up, or even taking 2 busters if they're back-to-back. In dungeons, it's part of the most overpowered combo in the game, but not until later. Right now, the 10-second timer makes it nice for forcing safety, but it's not something you're going to actively use. It's an emergency button at best, and not even the greatest at it. If your healer gets your HP back up, you probably didn't need it. If you did need it, you may hit it too late anyway. Then we add in the final drawback. When you Holmgang, you target an enemy and bind them in place. If the binded enemy dies, Holmgang ends. So you want to target the healthiest enemy, untarget enemies when you hit Holmgang, or make a macro so that you target yourself with Holmgang and avoid the drawback. All 3 are options, and you're going to want to make sure you can quickly use Holmgang without the enemy dying mid-timer. Once this becomes overpowered, it's hard to pass up. Level 45, Steel Cyclone. So there's some problems with this one. This is the AoE version of Inner Beast, doing a circle AoE around you for 160 potency of damage to all enemies hit. Overpower and Mythril Tempest do not generate gauge. The only way to generate gauge will be single target combos and a skill we get at 50. If you have the gauge going into AoE, put up Surging Tempest and then use Steel Cyclone. Otherwise we have to wait 30 levels before we can actually properly use this. Our final role action for tanking is Shirk at level 48. Level 50, Storm's Eye. This is a second combo off of Maim. Storm's Eye has the same power as Storm's Path, dealing 380 potency of damage. The differences are threefold. Storm's Eye has no attached heal, it increases beast gauge by only 10, and it applies Surging Tempest. This is the same as Mythril Tempest, buffing all of our damage by 10%. The difference is you do not want to overcap this timer. If your timer is below 30 seconds, you are safe to reapply the buff to increase your timer. If your timer is over 30 seconds, sticks to Storm's Path for more gauge. You want to maintain this buff until the end of a boss encounter, but no longer than that. If the buff wears off 1 or 2 attacks before a boss ends, that's fine. If you're going through several full combos without the buff, that's not good. Generally speaking though, maintaining the timer between 30 and 60 seconds is fine. Level 50, Infuriate. This is our first skill with charges. You can store multiple uses. The moment you use a charge, the cooldown will begin to obtain a new charge and still let you use the other stored charges. Infuriate has a 60-second charge time, or 2 minutes in total. It can also not be used outside of combat. Combat must begin before you hit Infuriate. This immediately gives us 50 beast gauge. This is what I was talking about during Steel Cyclone. After beginning combat in trash pools, immediately hit Infuriate to give yourself some gauge. Once initial aggro generation is done, spend it on Steel Cyclone for some extra damage. You ideally want to also combo this in with Berserk. This is a free, guaranteed use of your beast skills every 60 seconds. Combined with 60-second Berserk, you buff those strong hits further. Just be sure that you don't overcap the gauge in single target. Using Infuriate at 60 or higher gauge means you will waste some of the benefits. This is all info that is key for our openers through all the levels. We want to use our Infuriates as soon as possible to get the cooldown running, but also not overcap, getting these hits in under Berserk. So let's make our first opener. This sets up the pace of a whole fight, especially in trials and raids. You may be a tank, but your damage is part of how you keep enmity. Doing more damage also counts as mitigating. We want to balance our duties while still putting out the damage. Pre-pull, Defiance if relevant, Tomahawk, Infuriate, Heavy Swing, Maim, Berserk, Storm's Eye, Inner Beast, Infuriate, Inner Beast. Obviously, the pre-pull Defiance is taking into account main tank versus off tank. If you're doing content with 2 tanks and you aren't in charge of the boss, turn Defiance on after your opener to generate some enmity. Just make sure you don't steal the boss. We'll start with a Tomahawk for 2 reasons. The animation is short enough for Infuriate to become usable and be weaved in. More importantly for general tanking though, is this pulls the boss to the middle of the arena. Most bosses want to be in the middle of the arena for mechanics and other such reasons. Tomahawk will cause it to walk toward you in the short time before our heavy swing. Note that in any harder content, more difficult trials and raids and normal content, along with extreme and harder duties, you would use Tomahawk shortly after the 1 appears on a countdown. You will see me using the countdown timer later on at the least. We will then go through our base combo. Before Storm's Eye, we'll activate Berserk to start our burst phase. Both Inner Beast uses are going to be fueled by Infuriate. Those along with Storm's Eye are going to be our biggest hits for a while. At 70, our opener is going to have a major change, so I'm just going to leave it there. From here we just go into repeating our basic combo and use Inner Beast when we have the gauge. Use Infuriate and Berserk on cooldown, saving gauge for when Berserk comes up. When it comes to AoE openers, things are a lot different, to the point that AoE opener is a misnomer. There's a lot more to do with AoE situations than a normal opener. Bosses tend to always start the same way, with little variance. Trash pulls have the entire run-up, especially in wall-to-wall pulling. As you get better as a tank, you're going to pull multiple groups of enemies, since you can handle them all at once. While running, you can use Tomahawk and Provoke to grab enemies from a distance. Once they get close, you can hit them with an AoE, then keep running. Or use my tactic of a Tomahawk into Provoke into Tomahawk to handle groups of 3 enemies without stopping. Regardless, you need to grab enmity and keep moving. You don't want to be stopping until you've pulled every enemy you intend to pull. Ideally, you also get Surging Tempest active during this run too. Once you finally stop moving, we will do our burst and the so-called opener part of the opener. With Surging Tempest up, we can Berserk a Mythril Tempest and 2 Steel Cyclones. Both of the Cyclones are Infuriate field, since we have no passive gauge generation in AoE. This will luckily change later, but things will have to go like this until then. Finally, I want to mention that in neither of these I show defensive cooldowns being used. This is because there is no set way to handle cooldowns. Some bosses don't have tank busters, some of them will open with a tank buster. Then when it comes to dungeons, you can often do your opener after a previous pull used up some mitigation, forcing you to change what mitigation you would normally use in any pre-planned opener. The general idea is to always be using some form of mitigation, especially for tank busters. Don't stack too many at once, spreading it out over a fight. Slot in what will be relevant based on the pull you do. Wall-to-wall pulls usually call for Mitt, but what you have at the moment can change duty to duty. That's our start as Warrior. We don't have a lot here, and Heavensward is going to give us our most important skill. So let's not dawdle and head right into that part of the toolkit. Level 54, Inner Beast Mastery and Fell Cleave. Inner Beast has upgraded into Warrior's signature move. Fell Cleave is taking a chainsaw to the face of the enemies. It is a much higher 520 potency to a single target. Other than the animation and power, it's just a potency boost. Fell Cleave go burr. Level 56, Raw Intuition. Congrats, you are now a god. I'm not even joking. Every 25 seconds, this will reduce 10% of damage taken for 6 seconds. This effect is nice, but outside of bosses isn't going to be what we care about. What we care more about is that you also get a 400 potency heal for every hit you do with weapon skills. This is for every hit, which means if there are 10 enemies and you use Overpower, that's a 4,000 potency heal for a single hit. 6 seconds is enough to get 3 hits in, or 12,000 potency of healing. This is, without question, the most broken skill in the game for dungeon content. In any trash pack, you can use this to instantly heal to max. Let's bring up Holmgang again. 10 seconds of being unable to die. Before pull, tell your healer not to heal you. During the pull, get low on HP and pop Holmgang. Wait until Holmgang has 3 or 4 seconds left, hit Raw Intuition, and heal yourself back up to max. This turns Holmgang from the worst tank ultimate for dungeon content into the best one, thanks entirely to this combo. Just remember about not having a target for Holmgang, lest you accidentally lose it prematurely. Also keep in mind how quick enemies die. Most duties in the game suffer from massive power creep. Things will die before you can even attempt to use this combo. So we'll just get to about half HP and then use Raw Intuition instead. Later on, when stuff actually lives for longer than 10 seconds, return to this combo. In the meantime, 10% damage mitigation and a few self-heals is nice for boss fights too. This makes for a great skill to partner with anything for tank busters, such as Vengeance with Raw Intuition. It's a great tool, and one you should be using near on cooldown, something you don't tend to do with mitigation. Level 58, Equilibrium. Doubling down immediately with Warrior being a healing tank is Equilibrium. On a short 60-second cooldown, this will instantly heal you for 1200 potency of healing. At this level, that's nearly half of your HP, 2/3 if you get a critical hit. Once again, you can purposefully let yourself get low, pop Equilibrium, and be back to normal HP values. At later levels, healing does become less effective overall, so it becomes more like a quarter of your HP at level cap. As you level up, be ready to be even more proactive with Equilibrium, since it isn't as immediately powerful. Keep an eye on the relative amount it heals, and once it starts to fall lower, you know to react to this. That's an issue you never see with Raw Intuition though. If you're wall-to-wall pulling, the massive amounts of healing are far too much for any amount of scaling to weaken. Level 60, Steel Cyclone Mastery and Decimate. This is the same thing as Fell Cleave, but for Steel Cyclone. It now has become Decimate, which does 180 potency of damage to all enemies in range. The same issue applies though, as you can't generate gauge in trash pulls outside of Infuriate. This is just a nice potency boost and animation change. That's it for Heavensward. Some minor offensive upgrades, with Raw Intuition taking the spotlight. You have become the heal tank and absolutely decimate in dungeons. But we have further to improve, especially thanks to our most important offensive skill in Stormblood. Level 62, Onslaught. This is a skill with charges, 2 of them. The charge time is a lowly 30 seconds. Onslaught has 2 effects. The first is a basic 150 potency of damage. Free damage, use it on cooldown. The second is that you rush the target. That means this is a gap closer. You immediately rush to the enemy as long as they are within the 20 yalm range this skill has. This is amazing for dodging attacks. If you need to run out of range of an enemy, you can onslaught back in to lose little to no uptime. There's other such uses similar to this, like quickly moving to another enemy in cases with multiple bosses. What you do not use this for is pulling. Please do not pull with this. Positioning bosses is extremely important. This makes it harder to position right. It also can catch your team off guard and unprepared for the pull because you just zoomed in. If your goal with pulling so quick is speed of finishing the duty, well, you just achieved the opposite. This also applies to trash mobs, since mitigation is limited. If you're getting your face beaten for several seconds before your party reaches you to start doing damage, you're pushing the limits of how long your mitigation will last. Just keep the gap closing in mind. You may want to hold onto one of your charges during certain bosses. If you know for sure you're going to be out of range due to mechanics, you can hold onto a charge for gap closing. Level 64, Upheaval. On a 30-second cooldown, Upheaval does 400 potency of damage to a target. Use this on cooldown. It has a high potency and very short cooldown, so this ends up being worth a lot of damage. Just get used to throwing this out anytime you can. Not the most interesting skill, but it does give you a time to track constantly. Level 66, Enhanced Infuriate. This less buffs Infuriate and more buffs Fell Cleave and Decimate. Using either of these skills will reduce the cooldown of Infuriate by 5 seconds. This adds up extremely quickly. Keep in mind we used multiple Fell Cleaves just from what Infuriate gives us. Across an entire dungeon or trial, that's a lot of extra Infuriates, becoming a lot of extra Fell Cleaves. Level 68, Shake It Off. On a 90-second cooldown, Shake It Off places a shield on yourself and all allies within 30 yalms with 15% of each individual's max HP. This is great for yourself in trash, but really good for blocking raid-wide damage in boss fights. Your entire team will take 15% of their HP, less damage, for each of them. That's the main use. Anytime heavy damage is going to hit everyone, Shake It Off. There's a further effect, boosting the shield by 2% for each defensive buff you have going of Thrill of Battle, Vengeance, and Raw Intuition. Only these 3, as they are Warrior's unique mitigations. This effect actually is often a very bad thing, as it removes the effect to boost Shake. If you use mitigations to block damage, but then want to Shake, you'll lose the mitigations, potentially before the damage you wanted to block. Planning can make this very strong though. For example, there is a Tank Buster followed by raid-wide damage. Use Vengeance and Raw Intuition to block the Tank Buster, then immediately use Shake It Off for a 19% shield on everyone. Your survival will be covered, mostly by nature of being a tank, but the shield will also protect you. When it comes to trash mobs, Shake It Off is 15% HP worth of damage you can ignore. If you use it after, say, putting up Vengeance, you lose your 30% mitigation for only 2% HP worth of shields. This is not worth it, except if Vengeance was about to fall off anyway. Either pay close attention to your timers, or use Shake It Off before your other mitigations. Shake is an extremely useful skill, but can end up making things worse for you if used at the wrong time. That is, excluding a final effect, a hot or heal over time. This heals 100 potency a tick over 15 seconds. Hots are on the server tick every 3 seconds, so 5 ticks and 500 total potency. A small passive heal that's nice to have in any situation. Level 70. Berserk Mastery and Inner Release. Berserk gets a huge upgrade into Inner Release. The cooldown remains 60 seconds with a ton of extra buffs. You are granted 3 Inner Release stats. These allow you to use Fell Cleave and Decimate for free, even if you have 0 gauge. If you do have gauge, these are spent first. Further, these are still guaranteed critical direct hits. On top of this being 150 free gauge, Inner Strength is granted, nullifying most crowd control and knockback effects. This is a very niche effect, rarely intentionally used. A lot of the time, you'll block a knockback effect by accident. Finally, Surging Tempest is increased by 10 seconds for free. This only happens if the buff is already running. Unlike Berserk, we can use this ahead of time. All other attacks do not have any effect on our Inner Release stacks, which is nice, but you still only have 15 seconds of time to use your stacks, so there's a very fine line to walk, one that burst windows will push up against as we get more skills. Given that this is a free 150 gauge, we can finally get a lot of AoE usage. Decimate will get at least 3 uses, plus Infuriate, which will have its cooldown reduced by the 3 Decimates from Inner Release. Hit Infuriate to start the cooldown, hit Inner Release, do 4 Decimates, hit Infuriate again, do a 5th Decimate, and you have your next Infuriate cooldown 25 seconds reduced, plus the time needed to execute all of this. You are already halfway to your next Infuriate. That's a lot of AoE damage we just gained. We're moving into the next opener now, which is going to be our first real opener in a sense. Inner Release alone massively changes things. We also have to fit in all the new OGCDs thanks to Upheaval and 2 Onslaughts. We'll still Tomahawk and Infuriate for the same reasons. Things change at the end of our initial main combo. We put up Surging Tempest, then Inner Release for another free 10 seconds. We'll immediately spend Inner Release, doing 5 back-to-back Fell Cleaves when we include Infuriates. We'll weave in our OGCDs with the first Fell Cleave leading into Upheaval and Onslaught. We can fit in both, so no reason not to. Use the other Onslaught after the next Fell Cleave. After the 4th Fell Cleave, we'll have spent our gauge. We use Infuriate here specifically since we would otherwise overcap the gauge. Remember, gauge is spent last, so 100 gauge from Infuriate plus the combo gauge, we'd waste some otherwise. From here, do a basic combo into Fell Cleave. This should be the final push to make Infuriate come off of cooldown. Use the bonus immediately. Remember to use Upheaval every 30 seconds. Inner Release on cooldown, and Infuriate's mostly on cooldown. Keep them rolling, and don't forget to also weave in some defensives too. Again, openers cannot account for all kinds of content, and a one-size-fits-all solution to damage. AoE, we're going to do something similar. Get Surging Tempest running during the running part, and Inner Release when you stop running. Make sure to also Infuriate to get the cooldown rolling during the run. Can get a few extra uses like this. Upheaval and Onslaught are free damage during an AoE pool, so we can use them, but they're not the most important. Onslaught especially, since you could end up launching yourself into an AoE if you're not paying attention. Upheaval has no such problems. Let's get onto Shadowbringers and even more wonderful shifts in our toolkit. Warrior gets extra angry here. Level 72. Nascent Chaos and Chaotic Cyclone. Infuriate has been given a buff. Usage will grant you Nascent Chaos for 30 seconds. This will upgrade Decimate into Chaotic Cyclone for 1 use. Finally, this gives us a preview that at level 80, Fel Cleave is turned into Inner Chaos. Chaotic Cyclone is an interesting skill. It is a guaranteed critical direct hit, like with Inner Release. It deals 200 potency to all targets, a slight increase over Decimate. This still reduces the Infuriate timer by 5 seconds, despite only being granted by Infuriate. And because it is already an auto crit, Chaotic Cyclone does not spend a use of Inner Release, spending the 50 beast gauge instead. This is very important info between openings and any normal Inner Release window. Level 74, Mastering the Beast. Finally, after all this time, every use of Mythril Tempest will now grant 20 beast gauge. Every 3 AoE combos is 1 Decimate. 5 full combos for 2. By now you get how using gauge works from using it on Fel Cleave. Just remember we can finally use it in AoE now. Level 76, Enhanced Shake It Off. Shake It Off now comes with a small heal. It heals 300 potency on contact. This isn't something you'll use to any major effect. This will help healers top everyone off for the next instance of damage the party takes. If the healer is struggling, this might be a little more powerful, but generally this is just a bonus. Level 76, Nascent Flash. This skill is ridiculous. First off, you must choose a target. Normally you will choose your co-tank when they are the main tank. Secondly, you yourself get Nascent Flash, while your ally gets Nascent Glint for 6 seconds each. Nascent Flash is just the healing part of Raw Intuition, 400 potency of healing for yourself for every strike. Nascent Glint is just Raw Intuition for your ally, including the 10% mitigation. You are still the one that needs to attack to give the healing, since Glint heals using the HP healed from Nascent Flash. Otherwise, it's just like you're giving Raw Intuition to an ally, while still healing yourself in the process. Again, if you have a co-tank and they are taking damage, give them Nascent Flash on cooldown. This heals both of you at once. You can even potentially macro this to always target the co-tank. Though keep in mind macros can be prone to failure, even when well made. There is one downside though. Raw Intuition and Nascent Flash share a cooldown. If you use one, both go on cooldown. Given what Nascent Flash is used for, this downside barely exists outside of high-end content. Level 78, Enhanced Thrill of Battle. Thrill of Battle now has an extra effect, one that allows your healers to use it better. Healing actions will do 20% more healing for those 10 seconds. This makes using Equilibrium better, but not Raw Intuition, since that is not a direct heal. Say you take a Tank Buster with Thrill up. After taking the hit, pop Equilibrium. It will heal you and heal 20% more thanks to Thrill. If you don't have Equilibrium, well, the healers can heal you up with less effort needed thanks to that extra 20%. Level 80, Inner Chaos. Fun fact, this animation changed in Dawntrail. As we saw at 72, using Infuriate will grant us Nascent Chaos, which allows us to use Chaotic Cyclone and now Inner Chaos. Inner Chaos is a massive 660 potency hit on a target, reduces Infuriate by 5 seconds, and is a guaranteed critical direct hit. Inner Chaos cannot use stacks of Inner Release. If both are running, Inner Chaos will take priority and spend 50 gauge. The use of this is obvious. Hit Infuriate, do a very big hit. This brings us back to the opener. Due to how Inner Chaos works, we're gonna slot it into the opener in a very specific way that abuses the Inner Release timer. Everything is the same up to Inner Release. Remember, Inner Chaos does not spend a stack, so starting with Infuriate means we use that first, then 3 uses of Fel Cleave. Once we have used the third Fel Cleave, use Infuriate to get the second Inner Chaos use. We go through this order so that we don't run into issues with the Inner Release timer. 15 seconds is pretty short overall. The same applies in AoE. Do not use your second Infuriate until after the third Decimate. This prevents you from losing any uses, especially since Chaotic Cyclone isn't that much stronger than Decimate. Getting 5 hits consistently is always going to be worth far more, unless the enemies are dying in 4 attacks. Moving into Endwalker, we'll be seeing a few powerful bonuses, along with some further filling out of our AoE toolkit. Level 82, Raw Intuition Mastery and Bloodwhetting. Hey, know how strong Raw Intuition is? This is a buff to it. Why? Because warrior. Bloodwhetting is now 8 seconds of 10% reduced damage and 400 potency of healing. That 2 more seconds actually does matter. But wait, there's more! Now we also get 4 seconds of Stem the Flow, a second 10% mitigation. Now because this is 2 different buffs, it's not a 20% buff, but a 19% damage reduction in total. There are diminishing returns on stacked mitigation, but for those 4 seconds, that extra mitigation can really help reduce a tank buster's threat. Make sure to pop it right before the hit. We're still not done. Also having Stem the Tide that lasts for 20 seconds. This gives yourself an automatic shield with 400 potency of healing. That's as much as a single attack heals you in Bloodwhetting, but as shield HP. It will likely only reduce 1 auto attack from a boss worth of damage, but during a tank buster that's even more mitigation. Level 82, Enhanced Nascent Flash. That's right, Nascent Flash gives you and an ally 8 seconds of healing from your attacks. While that ally gets 4 seconds of Stem the Flow, the base 10% mitigation, and Stem the Tide. Bloodwhetting and Nascent Flash still share a cooldown, but that's the only reason this isn't just broken in raiding. Imagine if you could Bloodwhetting and Nascent Flash at once. Level 84, Enhanced Equilibrium. Equilibrium wasn't enough healing, so we added a Hawk. It lasts for 15 seconds, curing 200 potency. In total, that is 5 ticks or an extra 1000 potency over the duration. So let's take the Tank Buster example. You take a big hit, are at less than half your health now, Equilibrium for about a quarter of your health, and the regen will continue to heal you as the boss auto-attacks you. In Trash, it's some small but consistent healing for the duration, while enemies eat your face with their own consistent damage. It's very good for the inevitable constant damage you'll be taking, not just bursts of heals. Level 84, Melee Mastery. It's a boring trait with a weirdly worded effect. This buffs your base combo. It lists the new base potency of the skills that have gotten stronger. This also buffs the proper combo potencies. This is all way to say this is some basic potency boosts, making you do more damage. Level 86, Orogeny. This shares the 30-second cooldown of Upheaval. This is instead a 150 potency AoE, hitting everything within 5 yalms of you. It is stronger than Upheaval on 3 or more enemies, the normal AoE threshold. Simply, this is the AoE Upheaval. Use this in trash pools instead of Upheaval. Level 88, Enhanced Onslaught. We now have 3 stacks of Onslaught. You can now safely always use 2 stacks and keep a third for any downtime you run into. If no such situations occur, just use them on cooldown. Or if you're into the optimizing, make sure you go into burst phases every 2 minutes with 3 charges. Level 90, Primal Rend. Inner Release is buffed to now also grant us Primal Rend ready for 30 seconds. This allows for a single use of Primal Rend. This also works as a gap closer, the same size as Onslaught. It has a lengthy animation lock though. Weaving after Primal Rend is something you can't do well, so make sure to use your other weaving windows to their maximum effect. This is also an AoE centered on your target. The target will take a massive critical direct hit of 700 potency. All enemies within 5 yalms of the initial target take 350 potency of damage. This is a huge hit, with flexibility on where you use it thanks to having a 30-second timer. Make sure you're using it every time you use Inner Release. Normally, you'll be using this from point blank range. The gap closing effect can be useful, but it's not used that often. You'll get the full animation lock regardless of your distance. Keep this in mind so you don't send yourself into enemy AoEs. Primal Rend and another Onslaught stack easily fit into our next opener. Since you can weave Onslaught after every GCD, simply extend the back-to-back uses to a 3rd time. As for Primal Rend, we only want to use this after our Inner Release is finished. We can use it earlier if it'll be a gain in some way. We simply just want to make sure we get the full benefits from Inner Release. So simply put, make this your Inner Release finisher. Use Infuriate after the 3rd Fell Cleave as normal, and Primal Rend first. Primal Rend is the stronger hit, so we prioritize getting it out first. Just remember you can swap the order around a little to account for the animation lock and weaving space. If you also need to be mitigating a tank buster at the same time, Inner Chaos first will give you weaving space for it. For AoE openers, we can add in Orogeny too. Basically just weave it wherever you can. Onslaught has 3 uses now, but those are very low priority as far as being single target only. It's free damage if you have space, and won't get you killed in the process, but ignoring it completely isn't too huge a loss. We can move into Dawntrail now. While there doesn't seem like too much room to improve Warrior from here, this ends up being some of my favorite skills. Level 92, Vengeance Mastery and Damnation. Damnation is a much improved Vengeance with some added effects. First, we have that this is now a 40% damage reduction, an extra 10%. Secondly, we have Primeval Impulse. When Damnation ends, or you take damage with Damnation up, you will gain a 15-second hot of 300 potency. Given that's 5 ticks, that's 1500 potency of healing. That's more than Equilibrium's hot. Warrior is very much a self-healing tank, sustaining your HP to help the healers. This is a nice bonus for autos after a buster, or just the constant damage from trash mobs. Level 94, Melee Mastery 2. More potency boosts, but this gives a little love to Cleave and Upheaval too. Level 96, Enhanced Inner Release and Primal Wrath. While under Inner Release, Cleave and Decimate will now give you stacks of Burgeoning Fury. Inner Chaos and Chaotic Cyclone do not count. Using these 3 times, the 3 uses given to you by Inner Release itself, you will become Wrathful. This turns Inner Release into Primal Wrath. Primal Wrath is a 5-yalm AoE around yourself, doing 700 potency to the first enemy and 350 potency to all others. That's the same power as Primal Rend, but with further benefits. For 1, no animation lock. For 2, this is an OGCD. You weave this between your other attacks, usually weaving it immediately after your 3rd Cleave or Decimate. This is another reason why we finish Inner Release before Primal Rend. Getting Primal Wrath is a lot more damage. Just make sure to use the skill anytime you Inner Release. Level 100, Enhanced Primal Rend and Primal Ruination. Upon using Primal Rend, it will turn into Primal Ruination for 20 seconds. Weird to be shorter, but you're going to be using it instantly anyway. This is 780 potency to your target, with a 5-yalm AoE splash around the target. Those enemies take 390 potency. Essentially, this is our true finisher to Inner Release. Using it is just following up Primal Rend with it in every situation. Let's move into the final opener. This combines everything we've learned so far into a generally best option for killing enemies. Add in mitigation as you need, based on the fight you are in, since openers cannot account for the specific pace of all fights. I will review the full opener from the beginning as a final review. If you are main tanking, make sure you have Defiance up. Otherwise, we open with a Tomahawk, about 1 second before the fight begins. If using a countdown timer, slightly after the 1 appears. You'll then hit Infuriate immediately during the run-up. This gets the cooldown rolling immediately, so we get a 3rd use at the end of the opener. Move into doing a full base combo to time out waiting for party buffs to be put up. Plus we get Surging Tempest running. Then immediately enter Inner Release. Using it here means we get an added 10 seconds on Surging Tempest. Plus it gives us plenty of time to get all 3 uses of Cleave, even after the Inner Chaos we have to use first. Weave in Upheaval and Onslaught while going through your Cleave button spam. Upheaval is first because of it being far stronger. Make sure to keep it on cooldown whenever it becomes available, since it's so strong. After your 3rd Cleave, we'll obtain our use of Primal Wrath, which we'll use immediately. Weave in Infuriate at the same time as well. This will give us our 2nd Inner Chaos, after our Primal Rend and Primal Ruination. Those come first because they are stronger. From here, we're out of things to do, so we'll do one last full combo, this time ending with Storm's Path for extra gauge. This gives us a final Cleave, which will be the tipping point to make Infuriate come off of cooldown. Throw this out to finish out our opener. From here, make sure to use stuff on cooldown to keep the timers rolling. At most, save stuff for 2-minute windows. That being going into one with an Infuriate and stacks of Onslaught. Most everything else will align itself when using it on cooldown. Let's go through this again one more time with the Karaoke opener. I'll be repeating the skill names as they are used in the footage. This will give you a better idea of the pace of the opener, which is mostly pretty slow since there isn't too much weaving. A lot of your weaving is defensives, which again isn't gone over here. Pre-pull, Defiance if applicable, Tomahawk, Infuriate, Heavy Swing, Maim, Storm's Eye, Inner Release, Inner Chaos, Upheaval, Onslaught, Fell Cleave, Onslaught, Fell Cleave, Onslaught, Fell Cleave, Primal Rend, Infuriate, Primal Rend, Primal Ruination, Inner Chaos, Heavy Swing, Maim, Storm's Path, Fell Cleave, Infuriate, Inner Chaos. For AoE, adding in Primal Wrath and Primal Ruination is very simple and easy. After your third Decimate, simply weave in Primal Wrath. Primal Ruination still just follows whenever you use Primal Rend. Warrior is actually a really fun job. Simple, but you constantly make big explosions while being nigh unkillable in dungeons. Anger is fun when channeled into just never being killed. Just make sure you don't send that anger at your party members. Thank you for watching this Warrior 1 to 100 leveling skills guide. Feel free to give feedback or ask questions on what might still be confusing to you. I am always seeking to improve, as should you. Don't stop with this guide, even if I succeeded in helping you improve. Please leave a rating, comment, sub, those really do help creators. You can also come watch me on Twitch, or even go follow my Patreon. The links in the description will take you where you need to. Have fun in your adventures across Tyrol, and may the power of An a Nidhogg lay waste to your enemies.